have nothing left to stake," said Sir Roland Carey, sweating in the candlelight. "But my daughter," and across the card table, the Duke of Harker went very still, because he had just watched a drunk man wager a human being, and he had, in the space of a heartbeat, decided what he was going to do about it. It was past 2 in the morning at a gaming hell that a duke had no business frequenting, and the Duke of Harker had been frequenting it precisely because he was bored to the edge of madness, and a man of his rank cannot find, in the respectable drawing rooms of the Tun, a single evening of honest danger. He had come to play deep and think of nothing, and he had found himself, over the course of the night, watching one man in particular destroy himself at the tables, Sir Roland Carey, a shabby genteel baronet with shaking hands and desperate eyes, who had lost, over 4 hours, his ready money, his watch, his signet ring, a manor in Kent that was almost certainly mortgaged past its worth, and now, at last, having nothing else, his own daughter. "You cannot stake a daughter, Carey," drawled the man across from him, a hard-faced moneylender named Vassar, who had been winning all night, and had the look of a man who intended to collect this particular debt with relish. "It ain't done. A horse, a house, a wife's jewels, but a girl? What would I do with her?" "You know exactly what you would do with her," Sir Roland said, low and wretched, "and you have been eyeing the arrangement all night, Vassar. Do not pretend otherwise. She is 21 and comely and gently raised, and you have wanted a way into a better name for years, and here it is. One hand. If you win, she is yours. To marry, or not, as you please. I will sign whatever paper you like. Her guardianship, her hand, her whole future, against my note for the 800 I owe you. One hand. It is all I have left to give. God help me, and God will not, so there it is." And Vassar smiled, slow and satisfied, because it was exactly the arrangement he had been steering toward for 4 patient hours. A respectable man's daughter, delivered into his hands by the man's own ruin. No scandal, no force, all legal, the girl's own father signing her away, and he reached for the cards. "I'll take that wager," said the Duke of Harker. Both men turned. They had half forgotten the silent dark man at the end of the table, who had been playing modestly and saying nothing all night, and who now leaned forward into the candlelight, and whom Vassar, looking properly at him for the first time, recognized with a jolt. "Your Grace," the moneylender said warily, "this is a private matter between Sir Roland and—" "It is a matter of a man staking his daughter at cards," the Duke said, "which makes it, by my reckoning, everyone's matter, and mine in particular, because I have decided I do not care to watch you win her. So I am going to enter the wager, Vassar, and I am going to win, and then the girl will be mine and not yours, and we shall all be spared the spectacle of what you had planned. Sir Roland, your terms, one hand, your daughter's guardianship and hand against the debt. I will cover Vassar's 800 and stake it against you myself, so that if I lose, you owe nothing, and Vassar gets his money and the girl both. And if I win, the debt is paid, Vassar is satisfied in coin, and your daughter comes to me. Do you understand? Either way, your debt is cleared. The only question the cards decide is which of us your daughter goes to, and I promise you, Sir Roland, drunk as you are, that even you can tell the difference between the two of us, and even you would rather it were me." Sir Roland Carey looked from the hard, hungry face of the moneylender to the cold, controlled face of the Duke, and some last flicker of a father's conscience surfaced through the gin, and he nodded, and Vassar, who could not object without revealing exactly what he had intended, and who was, besides, being offered his money in full, subsided, sourly, and the cards were dealt. The Duke of Harker won. He had known he would. He was a far better player than either man, and cold sober besides. And when the last card fell, and the hand was his, he sat back and watched Sir Roland Carey put his face in his hands, and watched Vassar count his 800 pounds with a bitter mouth, and understood that he had just, in the space of 10 minutes, won a woman he had never met at a card table in a gaming hell, and that he had not the faintest idea what he was going to do with her, except that it would not, whatever else, be any of the things her father had been prepared to let Vassar do. "The papers," the Duke said, "in the morning, at my solicitor's, sober, both of us. I will not hold a man to a drunk signature. We will do it properly in daylight or not at all. But understand me, Carrie." And here the cold voice dropped to something that made the ruined baronet flinch. "The wager stands, and I have won, and your daughter's future is mine to determine now, and you have lost the right to any say in it, having gambled it away at 2 in the morning to settle your own debts. What kind of man does that, sir? What kind of man sits at a table and stakes his own child? I have met a great many contemptible men in gaming hells, and I believe you are the very worst, and I have won your daughter chiefly to keep her from being won by someone worse than you, which I would not have thought possible an hour ago. Go home, sober up, come to my solicitor at noon, and pray very hard, that your daughter turns out to be a more forgiving person than I am, because if I had a father who had done what you have done tonight, I do not think I could ever look at him again." And the Duke of Harker rose from the table and left the gaming hell, and rode home through the grey London dawn with the strangest sensation he had ever carried, that he had gone out to escape his boredom, and had come back the winner of a wife, a woman whose name he did not even know, whom he had rescued from one fate by consigning her to another, and who would, when she learned of it, have every possible reason to hate him nearly as much as she must surely already hate her father. He did not yet know her name. He would learn it at noon. Miss Arabella Carey. He did not yet know that winning her at a card table would turn out to be the single best thing that ever happened to him, or that in saving her he had, without the smallest intention of doing so, lost his own cold heart entirely and forever. He knew only that he could not have sat at that table and watched Vassar win, and that some decisions a man makes, not with his reason, but with the last uncorrupted thing in him, and lives with after, as best he can. Miss Arabella Carey learned that she had been wagered at cards the way she learned most of her father's disgraces, after the fact, from the servants, before anyone had the courage to tell her to her face. She was 21, and she had spent the better part of her life managing the consequences of Sir Rowland Carey's ruin, selling the plate quietly to pay the butcher, turning her gowns to make them last, holding together the shreds of a household that her father gambled away faster than she could economize, and preserving, through all of it, a fierce, cold dignity that was the only inheritance her dead mother had left her worth anything. She had believed, by 21, that her father had already done the worst he could do. She was wrong, and she learned how wrong when the Duke of Harker's carriage arrived at the shabby house in an unfashionable street, and a footman in ducal livery presented a card, and Arabella came down to the cold parlor to find the most powerful man she had ever seen standing in it, and to be told, with as much gentleness as such a thing can be told, that her father had staked her at a card table the night before, and lost, and that she now belonged, in the eyes of the law her father had invoked, to the Duke of Harker. She did not weep. The Duke, watching her receive it, marked that at once, and marked it with respect. She went white, and very still, and something terrible moved behind her eyes. But she did not weep, and she did not faint, and she did not rage. She simply absorbed the blow, as a woman absorbs a blow she has been braced for her whole life, without knowing its exact shape, and then she lifted her chin and looked the Duke of Harker dead in the eye. "So," she said, "he has sold me after all. I always wondered whether he would. At the end, when there was nothing else left, I told myself he would not, that whatever else my father was, he would not stake his own daughter like a horse. I see I gave him too much credit, which is a mistake I have made about him my whole life, and seem unable to stop making." Her voice was perfectly level and perfectly cold, and the Duke found it more affecting than any tears could have been. "And you won me, at cards, in a gaming hell, at 2 in the morning. I understand, your property now, your prize, to do with as you please. Well, your grace, here I am. You have won me. What do you mean to do with your winnings?" And the Duke of Harker, who had rehearsed a dozen careful speeches on the ride over, and now found every one of them inadequate to the fierce, cold dignity of the woman in front of him, discarded all of them and told her the plain truth. I mean to give you your choice, he said, which is the one thing, I gather, that no one in your life has ever given you. Miss Carey, I did not win you last night in order to own you. I won you because a moneylender named Vassar was about to win you, and I have known Vassar for years, and I know exactly what he intended, and I could not sit at that table and watch it happen. So I entered the wager, and I won, and now, by the letter of the disgraceful arrangement your father made, your future is mine to determine. And I am here to tell you that I determine it thus. It is yours, not mine. Yours. I hold your father's paper. It is in my solicitor's keeping, and I am going to use it for exactly one purpose, which is to ensure that no one, not Vassar, not your father, not any other man, can ever again treat you as a thing to be won or sold. You are free, Miss Carey. I won you in order to free you, because it was the only way to keep you from being won by someone who would not. You may take that freedom and go anywhere you like, and I will settle a sum on you sufficient to make you independent, and you need never see me again. Or, and here, for the first time, the cold, controlled voice hesitated, or you may stay, and let me court you, properly, as a man courts a woman he would be honored to marry, and see whether the man who won you at cards might, given time and your permission, become a man you could choose. But that is your choice, entirely, and there is no wrong answer, and nothing whatever hangs on it but your own free preference. I did not free you from your father and Vassar in order to make myself your new owner. I freed you to be free. What you do with it is yours to say. Arabella Carey stared at him. You won me at cards, she said slowly, in order to set me free. You risked £800 and a public scene and the whole of your consequence at 2 in the morning to keep a stranger from being sold to a moneylender. And now you stand in my father's cold parlor and offer me my own choice and independence and ask for nothing and tell me I may walk out of here and never see you again with a fortune in my pocket. She shook her head, as though the arithmetic would not resolve. That is not how the world works, Your Grace. I have lived 1 in 20 years in the world, and I have never once seen it work like that. Men do not win women and then free them. There is always a price. There is always a hook in the gift. So I will ask you plainly, because I have learned to ask everything plainly. Where is the hook? What is it you actually want? Because I do not believe, I cannot believe, that a duke won me at a card table out of pure disinterested chivalry and means to simply give me back to myself. No one is that good. Tell me the real terms. And the Duke of Harker looked at the fierce, disbelieving woman who had been so thoroughly taught that kindness was always a trap, that she could not recognize it when it stood in front of her offering her the world. And he understood, with a pang, that she and he were more alike than she could know, two people whom the world had taught to expect the hook in every gift, and he answered her with the only thing that could possibly reach her, which was the truth. There is no hook, he said, and I know that you cannot believe that, because I could not believe it either, in your place, because I too have spent my life being wanted for what I have, rather than what I am, and learning to look for the hook in every kindness. And so I recognize the wound in you, Miss Carey, because I carry its brother. But I am asking you to consider the possibility, just the possibility, that this once the gift has no hook, that a bored, cold, lonely man sat at a card table and could not stomach watching a woman be sold, and won her to free her, and found, in the winning, that he had done the first genuinely good thing he had done in years, and did not want to spoil it by making it a bargain. That is the whole truth. You do not have to believe it today. You have every reason not to. But it is true, and time will prove it true, because I am going to free you, whether or not you believe I am doing it freely, and a hook that never closes is no hook at all. Take the freedom, Miss Carey. Test it. If it is a trap, you will find the hook soon enough, and you may despise me for it. And if it is not, if it turns out to be exactly what I say it is, then perhaps, someday, you will let me court you, not because I won you, but because you have come to want me, freely, which is the only way I would ever have you. There, that is the real terms. There are no other terms. I am sorry there is no hook for you to find. I understand it makes the whole thing harder to trust. but I have none to offer you, and I would not if I could." Arabella did not answer him that day. She asked for time, and the Duke gave it without a murmur, and withdrew, leaving her alone in the cold parlor with the most bewildering choice of her life, and with her father, who came creeping down once the great man's carriage had gone, gin-sick and shamefaced, to see what was to become of him now. That conversation, she would think later, decided more than she knew. "Well," Sir Rowland said, not quite meeting her eye, "what does he mean to do?" "The Duke. He has the paper." "Does he? Will he keep you? Marry you?" "It would be, Bella, it would be the making of us. A ducal connection. He might be brought to settle something on your old father. To clear the—" "Get out," Arabella said. "Now, Bella. Get out of this room, father, before I say a thing I cannot take back." She was shaking, but her voice was ice. "You staked me at a card table. Do you understand what you did? You sat in a gaming hell, and you wagered your own daughter, your only child, against a debt. You put me on the table like a watch, like a horse, like the last thing a ruined man has to sell. And you lost me, to a stranger, and I woke this morning the property of a man I had never met, because my own father gambled me away at 2 in the morning. And now you come creeping down to ask whether the connection might be made to profit you, whether the man who won your daughter at cards might be brought to settle something on the father who staked her. You are asking me to help you turn my own sale to your advantage." She laughed, and it was a terrible sound. "There is no bottom to you. I kept thinking, all these years, that we had reached the bottom of what you would do. The plate sold, the house mortgaged, the tradesmen unpaid, my mother's jewels gone. And every time, you found a new floor beneath the floor. And now here it is, the true bottom at last. My own father, staking me at cards, and then hoping to profit by it. I did not think even you could reach it. I was wrong, as I have always been wrong to hope better of you." Sir Rowland Carey had the grace, at least, to weep, though Arabella had learned long ago that his tears meant nothing, being as freely spent as his money. "I was drunk," he said. "I was desperate. Vassar would have had me in the Fleet by morning. I did not, Bella. I did not think." "No," Arabella agreed. "You did not think. You never think. That is not an excuse, father. It is the whole indictment. A man who does not think before he stakes his daughter at cards is not less guilty than one who does. He is a man who values her so little that she does not even rise to the level of a thought. That is what I have been to you my whole life. Not a daughter. A resource. A thing to be spent when everything else is gone. And do you know what the strangest part is? The Duke of Harker, the stranger who won me, has treated me, in one morning, with more respect than you have shown me in 21 years. He won me, and his first act was to offer me my freedom. You made me, and your last act was to sell it. That is the measure of the two of you, and it is the measure of everything, and I will thank you never to speak to me again of profiting from it." And she sent him from the room, and stood alone a long while afterward, and found, when she examined herself, that alongside the fury and the shame, there was something new and unfamiliar rising, because the contrast her father had so unwittingly drawn had done its work. She had been sold by the man who was supposed to protect her, and freed by a stranger who owed her nothing, and a woman who has been shown that starkly, the difference between the man who made her and the man who saved her cannot help but begin, cautiously, distrustfully, against all her armor, to wonder whether the saver might be exactly what he claimed. She did not decide to trust the Duke that day, but she decided to test him, which was the beginning of everything, because Arabella Carey had never in her life tested a man expecting to find him good, and the Duke of Harker was about to become the first who ever survived the testing. She took the freedom, and she tested it, exactly as he had invited her to, and the testing was the whole of the courtship, and the finest thing about it. For Arabella Carey did not fall gratefully into the Duke's arms. She had too much sense and too many scars for that. She accepted the independence he settled on her. She was not too proud to take security when it was offered without a price, having been poor too long to romanticize poverty. But she took it as a woman testing a bridge she fully expected to collapse, waiting, every day, for the hook to close. She let him install her, respectably, in the household of his widowed aunt, Lady Sefton, a warm, shrewd old woman who took to the fierce card-won girl at once. And she watched the Duke of Harker, over the weeks that followed, with the pitiless attention of a woman determined to catch him in the lie she was certain he must eventually tell. He never told it. That was what undid her in the end. Not any grand gesture, but the slow accumulation of weeks in which the hook simply never closed. He called on her, but always properly, always with the aunt present, always leaving the moment she wished it. He never once referred to the card game, never treated her as a thing he had won, never presumed on the debt or the paper or the power he held. He courted her as he had promised, as a man courts a free woman whose refusal he would accept. And he asked for nothing, and pressed for nothing, and let her set every pace, and slowly, against her own iron determination not to, Arabella Carey began to understand that she had been telling herself a lie, that the world always had a hook, that kindness was always a trap, that no one was ever good for nothing. Because here was the counterexample, patient and undeniable, calling on her every week and asking nothing, and either the Duke of Harker was the most patient confidence trickster in England, running a con with no visible profit for months on end, or he was exactly what he claimed to be, and the longer it went on, the harder the first became to believe. And she came to know him, in those weeks, the real man behind the cold ducal front, and found, to her alarm, that she liked him enormously. He was dry and clever and lonely, wanted by the whole world for his rank, and known by almost no one, and he talked to her as though she were the only real person he had met in years, and listened to her fierce opinions as though they mattered, and made her laugh, which no one had done in a very long time, and treated her, always, as an equal and never as a prize. She had braced against a captor. She found a friend, and a friend, offered patiently and freely to a woman who has been starved of friendship her whole life, is a far more dangerous thing than any captor, because there is no defending against it. There was one afternoon that broke through more of her armor than a month of proper calls had managed, and it broke through precisely because it was not a proper call at all. The Duke had come to take her driving, and it had begun to rain, and rather than turn back, he had driven them, on impulse, to a part of London Arabella did not know, a poor district near the river, and had stopped the carriage before a plain brick building she took at first for a warehouse, and had said, with the awkwardness that still overtook him whenever he was about to reveal something of himself, "I have a thing I do, on the 4th Tuesday of the month, that no one knows of, and I find I should like you to see it, though I cannot entirely say why. You need not come in, but I should like you to." It was a school, a charity school, for the daughters of the poor, and not the grudging, pious, half-starved kind that the ton endowed to salve its conscience, but a warm, well-run, well-fed place, where poor girls were taught to read and reckon, and so, and more than that, were treated as though they mattered. And the Duke of Harker, Arabella discovered, did not merely fund it. He came, quietly, once a month, and knew the girls by name, and heard their lessons, and had done so for years, and had told no one, because, as she pieced together from the matron's fond, unguarded chatter, he did not want it known, did not want the credit, did not want a private kindness turned into a public performance. Arabella watched the cold, feared Duke of Harker sit in a shabby schoolroom and listen gravely to a 9-year-old read her halting way through a psalm and praise her, and mean it, and she felt the last of her certainty about him crack straight through. "Why did you bring me here?" she asked him in the carriage after, her voice not quite steady. "You have hidden this for years. You told no one, and you have shown it to me, a woman you won at cards a month ago and barely know. Why? Because you keep asking me where the hook is," the Duke said quietly, watching the rain. "You cannot believe a man is good for nothing, because no one in your life has ever been. And I could tell you 1,000 times that I am not scheming, and you would go on watching for the hook, because words are cheap, and you have been lied to by better liars than I am. So I did not bring you words. I brought you the one true thing about myself that no one else knows, a thing I do in secret, for nothing, with no possible profit, seen by no one who could advance me. I brought you my hookless place. Because I thought, if she sees that I do this, quietly, for years, wanting nothing, seen by no one, then perhaps she will believe that a man can do a thing for nothing, that kindness without a hook is a real thing in the world, that I am capable of it, and therefore that I might be capable of it with her too. He turned to her. I did not bring you here to impress you, Arabella. I brought you here to be believed. That is all I want from you. Not gratitude, not your hand, not anything you are not ready to give. Only to be believed. When I tell you there is no hook, I thought a schoolroom full of poor girls. I have loved in secret for 6 years, might say it better than I can. And Arabella Carey looked at the man across the carriage, who had shown her, to be believed, the one part of himself he had spent years hiding, and understood that she did believe him, entirely, at last, and that the believing had undone the whole careful fortress of her distrust, and that she was in a great deal more danger than she had ever been from any hook, because she had just discovered that the Duke of Harker was exactly as good as he claimed to be, and that a woman cannot arm herself against goodness the way she can arm herself against a trap. I believe you, she said, low. God help me, I believe you. There is no hook. I have watched you for a month waiting for it, and there is none. And now you have shown me the school, and I am out of reasons to distrust you, your grace, which is a very frightening place for me to be, because distrust has kept me safe my whole life, and you have taken it away from me, gently, one Tuesday at a time, and I do not know what is left to protect me now. Nothing is left to protect you, the Duke agreed, because nothing is threatening you. That is the whole point. You do not need protecting from me, Arabella. You never did. And when you are ready to believe that all the way to the bottom, not today, but someday, I will be here, on the 4th Tuesday of every month and every other day besides, wanting nothing, hookless, hoping. There is no hurry. I have discovered I am a very patient man where you are concerned. I did not know that about myself until I met you. It is one of a great many things I did not know about myself until I met you. And he said no more, and did not press her, and drove her home through the rain. And Arabella sat beside him with her whole armor in pieces at her feet, and understood that she was, slowly and terribly and wonderfully, falling in love. It was Lady Sefton, the Duke's shrewd widowed aunt, in whose warm house Arabella had been installed, who named it aloud before Arabella herself would. You are in love with my nephew, the old woman observed one evening, over their needlework, in the comfortable way of a woman stating the weather. Do not trouble to deny it. I have buried 2 husbands and married off 4 nieces, and I know the look. And you have it, and have had it a fortnight, and he is in love with you, which I have known longer, because I have not seen that boy alive since his father died, and he is alive now, every time he crosses my threshold to call on you. So, that is settled. The only question that remains is what you intend to do about it, and I will tell you plainly, child, because I am too old for tact. Do not let your pride throw it away. It is not pride, Lady Sefton, Arabella said, low. It is, he won me at cards. Whatever grows between us, that will always be the beginning of it, and the world will always know it, and I will always be the woman the Duke of Harker won at a gaming table. How can I build a marriage on that? How can I stand up as his duchess, knowing that every soul in that ballroom is thinking, there she is, the one he won at cards? Lady Sefton set down her needlework and looked at the girl with sudden fierce kindness. Let me tell you something, Arabella Carey, she said. That took me 60 years to learn. It does not matter how a thing begins. It matters how it goes on and how it ends. I married my first husband for his money, and everyone knew it and whispered it, and I did not care a straw, because over 30 years that cold arrangement became the truest love of my life. And by the end, no one remembered how it began. They only saw how it was. The beginning of a marriage is a fact. The marriage itself is a work, a thing the two of you build, day by day, over years. And if you build it well, the beginning becomes a story you tell your grandchildren and laugh over, and nothing more. You are frightened that you will always be the woman he won at cards. But that is only true if the marriage is nothing more than the card game. Make it more. Build something so plainly good, so plainly loving, that when people say, "He won her at cards," the answer that rises in every mind is, "Yes, and look what he built with her after." My nephew did not win a wife at that table, child. He won the chance at one. What the two of you make of the chance, that is the marriage, and no one will remember the cards once they have seen the marriage, if you make the marriage worth seeing. Do not let the beginning rob you of the whole. It is a small thing, a beginning. The going on is everything. She took up her needlework again. Now, he will offer for you within the week, mark me, and you will say yes, if you have any sense, which I believe you have. And you will build something with him that makes the card game a footnote. That is my advice, and it is good. And you may have it for nothing, which I understand is the only kind of gift you have learned to trust. And Arabella laughed despite herself, wetly, and understood that the old woman was right, that the beginning was only a beginning, that the marriage was the thing they would build, and that she had been letting the shame of the card table rob her of a happiness that had, after all, nothing to do with the cards, and everything to do with the patient, hookless man who called every week and asked nothing. She resolved, that evening, to stop letting the beginning frighten her out of the whole. And when the Duke offered for her, a week later, exactly as Lady Sefton had foretold, she was ready, and she said yes, with her whole free heart. She fell in love with him, and she was furious about it, and she told him so, which was the most Arabella thing she could possibly have done. "You have done it on purpose," she accused him, one afternoon in Lady Sefton's garden. "You have been so relentlessly, patiently good, that I have gone and that I have come to. It is not fair, your grace. I armored myself against a captor. I was ready for the hook. I have spent my whole life ready for the hook. And you never closed it, week after week, until I forgot to keep watching for it. And now I find I have grown fond of you, which is a great deal more than I meant to grow, and which is entirely your fault for being so unaccountably, suspiciously kind. And I do not know whether to thank you or never forgive you." She glared at him. "Is this the hook? Is this what you were after all along? Not to own me by force, but to make me love you, so that I would give you freely what you were too honorable to take? Because if so, it is the cleverest and cruelest trap of all, and I have walked straight into it. And Arabella." The Duke of Harker took her hands, and there was nothing cold in his face at all. "Stop. Listen to me. It is not a hook. It is not a trap. It is not a scheme to win by patience what I would not take by force. It is only this, that I won a stranger at a card table meaning to free her, and I freed her, and somewhere in the freeing I fell in love with her fierceness, and her pride, and the way she looked a duke in the eye, and demanded to know the terms, and the whole brave, wounded, suspicious, magnificent truth of her. And I have spent these weeks not scheming to make you love me, but simply loving you, and hoping, without any right to hope, that you might someday come to feel a fraction of it in return. That is all. If you have grown fond of me, it is not because I trapped you into it. It is because, given weeks of my company with no hook in it, you discovered you liked the man, which is the only way I ever wanted to be liked. I love you, Arabella, freely, and I have been waiting, with a patience that is costing me a great deal more than you know, for you to be free enough, and unafraid enough, to tell me whether there is any hope for me at all. There is no hook. There is only a man who won you by accident, and lost his heart on purpose, standing in a garden, hoping. And Arabella Carey, card 1, father betrayed, armored against every kindness, looked at the Duke of Harker, and finally, fully, let herself believe the impossible thing, that the gift had no hook, that the kindness was real, that she had been won by a man who wanted nothing but to give her back to herself, and had, in the giving, become the one person she would freely choose. "There is hope for you," she said, and her voice broke on it, the armor coming off at last. "There is a great deal of hope for you, you impossible, patient, hookless man. I love you too, freely. I have tested it every day for weeks, precisely to be sure it was free. And it is. God help me, it is entirely free, which means I have no excuse and no defense, and no one to blame but myself and your own relentless goodness. I do not want the independence and the empty freedom and never seeing you again. I want you, not because you won me, because you freed me and then earned me, which is a different and a far rarer thing. Yes, Julian, whatever you are about to ask, yes. And the Duke of Harker, who had won a woman at a card table and freed her, and then spent months earning the right to ask, asked her properly, on one knee in his aunt's garden, and Arabella Carey said yes a second time, freely, and it was the first entirely free choice of her whole constrained life, and she made it with her eyes open and never regretted it. There was one piece of ugliness still to be settled, and it came, as such things do, from the man who had wanted her first. For Vassar, the moneylender had not forgotten that a duke had reached across a card table and taken from him a prize he had spent 4 hours steering toward. And Vassar, being a vindictive man, and having by now heard that the duke meant not to keep the card-won girl quietly, but to marry her openly and make her a duchess, saw a way to poison the whole thing and salve his own resentment at once. He began to spread the story, in the low places where such stories start and the high places where they do the most damage, that the Duke of Harker had won his bride in a gaming hell, at cards, like a horse or a house, that the great match was no romance but a disgrace. The new duchess, a woman literally gambled away by her drunkard father and claimed by a duke as a wager won, and that all the fine talk of love was a gloss on an ugly truth, that the Duke of Harker had bought himself a wife across a card table at 2 in the morning. It was, of course, true in its facts, which is what made it dangerous, and it aimed itself precisely at Arabella's deepest wound, the shame of having been staked, sold, treated as a thing, and threatened to follow her into her marriage and make her, forever, the duchess who was won at cards. The Duke of Harker heard the story spreading and understood exactly what it was and where it was aimed, and he did the thing he had learned was the only answer to a poisonous truth, which is a louder and more complete truth. He did not deny it. One cannot deny a fact. But he took control of the telling, and he told it whole, everywhere, before all of society, in his own words. Yes, he had been at the gaming hell. Yes, a man had staked his own daughter at cards. And yes, he, the Duke of Harker, had entered the wager and won, for one reason, which he stated plainly and repeatedly until the whole ton had heard it, to keep her from being won by the moneylender Vassar, who had engineered the wager precisely to get an innocent woman into his power, and whom the Duke had beaten at his own table to save her from exactly that fate. He made the story not one of a duke buying a wife, but of a duke rescuing a woman from a predator, which was the truth, the whole truth, that Vassar's version had carefully omitted, and he named Vassar, publicly, as the man whose designs he had thwarted, so that the moneylender found the story rebounding entirely upon himself. Not the Duke exposed as a man who bought a bride, but Vassar exposed as a predator who had tried to win an innocent woman at cards and been beaten to it by a better man. Society, which loves a rescue far more than a scandal, seized on the Duke's version with delight, and Vassar found himself the villain of the tale he had meant to tell against another, cut in the low places and barred from the high ones, undone, as all the cruel in these stories are undone, by his own weapon turned in his hand. And Arabella, watching her husband-to-be take the very fact that most shamed her, that she had been staked at cards, and transform it, in the public telling, from her disgrace into her rescue, understood the last and best thing about the man she had chosen, that he would spend his whole life doing exactly this, taking the wounds the world had dealt her and turning them, by main force and love, into the story of her worth. They were married that summer, and the Duchess of Harker was, by every account, one of the happiest women in England, happy with the particular unshakable happiness of a person who had been treated as a thing her whole life, and was now, every day, treated as a treasure. Her father she did not receive. The Duke settled a small allowance on Sir Rowland, administered strictly, enough to keep him from the gutter and not a penny more, and Arabella visited him twice a year out of duty and no more, because some betrayals cannot be mended, and a father who stakes his daughter at cards has forfeited more than an allowance can buy back. But she bore him, in the end, no active hatred, because hatred was a hook too, and she had decided to be free of every hook, including that one. Late in their long marriage, the Duke of Harker was asked, once, by a young man of his acquaintance, who had heard the famous story, whether it was truly so, whether he had really won his duchess at cards. "I won her at cards," the Duke agreed, "which is the most shameful way a man ever acquired a wife, and I will not pretend otherwise. But you have the story backwards, as everyone does who tells it as a scandal. I did not win a wife at cards. I won a woman's freedom at cards. I won the right to hand her back to herself, which her father had gambled away and a predator was about to seize. And then I spent a year earning, honestly and freely, the thing the cards could never have given me, which was her actual heart. The cards won me a stranger. My own patience won me my wife. Those are different victories, young man, and only the second one was worth anything, and it took a great deal longer than a hand of cards, and cost me a great deal more, and I would not trade it for 3 kingdoms. Win a woman at cards and you have won nothing but a prisoner. Free her and earn her, and let her choose you. That is the only way to win a wife worth having. I stumbled onto it by accident, at 2 in the morning, half out of boredom. It was the luckiest accident of my life. But do not mistake the accident for the victory. The accident only won me the chance. The victory I had to earn, freely, from a woman who had every reason to distrust me, and made me prove myself every single day. And thank God she did, because a love that is not freely given and freely tested is not worth having, and mine was tested harder than most, and came through gold.